Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to Independence Township. You know, I really recognize that this has been a short time to get ready and to get the directions to Independence Township. Ruth Johnson and Jim Runstead have put this together on short notice, which is parallel to the short notice we've had since the Board of Commissioners passed the bill, passed the resolution, so it all goes together.
Right.
But you are really great people to come out here on short notice, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing it, really.
Thank you for doing this.
So Ruth and Jim have a nice program put together, public transit town hall meeting, and welcome to the panel this evening. We really look forward to an informative evening tonight. This is really informative. This is not advocacy for or against. This is a fact deal, learning new facts, and you can decide what the facts dictate for your vote, ultimately. And that's really what America's all about, is getting the information and then acting accordingly. So we look forward to this program, and let's go, Jim.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for hosting this event tonight. We have a great, I would say, a panel of experts and panelists here who are extremely dedicated to getting the information out on this issue. My name is Jim Runstead. I'm the senator from the 15th district, soon to be the 23rd district, and that would include this area. I have been an Oakland County commissioner for 3 terms in the past, and so very deeply involved with Oakland County for many decades. This is my home, like you, Oakland County, and we want to take care of it. We're here tonight because the Oakland County Board of Commissioners is asking voters to double their property taxes in Oakland County residents, from the current $33 million to a proposed $66 million, to fund SMART in the communities who have opted into this service. SMART bus ridership has decreased from a peak of 13.3 million rides in 2008 to 9.4 million rides in 2019. The already low ridership of SMART plunged even further during the COVID-19 pandemic and has never recovered. Only 4 million rides were given in 2020, and last year this barely increased, with less than 4.1 million rides when the pandemic was ended. Given all this, despite a 57% decrease in service, the transit agency spent an additional, now keep in mind, almost 60% plunge in riders, they spent an additional $3 million in their budget, to a whopping $1.37 million last year. According to the most recent data from 2020 released by the U.S. Census Bureau, only 0.4% of Oakland County riders relied on public transit to commute to their jobs. I've been seeing that online. Oh, this is for people to get to their jobs. That's 2,500 people out of a population of 1.3 million who use the public transportation to get to the job. While buses run near empty, taxpayers who do not benefit pay the bill. Last year, public funding, your tax dollars, paid for 98.9% of SMART's operating budget. Meanwhile, only 1.1% of expenses were covered by fares paid by the riders. Even before the pandemic, fares covered less than 9% of the operating costs of the Regional Transit Authority in 2019. So tonight we will hear from a variety of speakers who have an opportunity for you to ask questions. We are here to get the facts on this proposal, and I believe personally that this deal is a very bad deal for Oakland County. So with that, I think we're going to start with questions, or
No.
the panelists. So we're going to start with Jerry Poisson to bring the panel to a start.
Well, thank you, Jim. My name is Jerry Poisson, and I was asked by Ruth to come forward and give a little history of Oakland County's involvement with SMART. My background is for 38 years I worked for Oakland County. Started as a prosecutor trainee in 1981 and retired by the Board of Commissioners after Brooks's death as the Oakland County Executive, in between his death and the appointment of David Coulter. For 20 of those years as a Deputy County Executive, just under 20 years, I was one of Brooks's 2 appointees to the SMART Board of Directors. And so I'm very familiar with what SMART really is, and there's a lot of confusion in town and with the language, so forgive me if I get a little bit technical. SMART is a mass transportation authority formed by the state legislature. The members of SMART by statute currently include Wayne County, Macomb County, Oakland County, and as an administrative matter, Monroe County is there. SMART has 0 taxing authority, 0. They've never got funding from anyone other than the federal government, the state government, and then in 1995, when they were on the verge of bankruptcy, the 3 major counties got together, Wayne County, Oakland County, and Macomb County, and came up with a plan. The plan was to use a different law called the Local Public Transportation Authorities Act, and they formed what's called the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority in Oakland County. In Wayne County, it was the Wayne County Public Transportation Authority. And in Macomb County, they decided they didn't want to form an authority, so they just decided they would put a question before their voters for a county-wide tax. Now, why did we do this? Well, we did it because the city of Detroit did not want to pay any money for regional transit. They had financial problems and they had DDOT to fund. And so we had to use a mechanism to get Wayne County in that would allow each community, each local community, to make their decision on whether or not they wanted to put a question before their voters on whether or not they should contribute towards public transportation. In Oakland County, in order to get Ruth, who was a county commissioner at the time, and a majority of the Republican Board of Commissioners to support putting a question before the voters, and they insisted wisely, and Brooks agreed, that this needed to be driven by local control. The individual communities, back then there were 61 cities, villages, and townships, needed to make a decision by themselves on whether or not they would support public transit through tax dollars. Now, when we first formed in 1995, when the dust settled, there were, as I recall, 22 of the 61 chose to opt in, as they called it, the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority. And then numerically, 37 or 38 communities decided there was not enough in it for them to put the question before their voters. That model of the local control, opt-in, opt-out, in my opinion, worked fine for 27 years. 27 years saw, I think, 2 additional Oakland County communities choose to opt in when they saw something in it for their local community, and their local voters decided. Now, what's before you today is a realization that the aqua taxes expired at the end of this tax year. Historically, we put the question on the ballot when Brooks was the county executive, through the Board of Commissioners and through the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority, just in those communities that indicated they wanted to be in. And millage lengths were, there was 1 3-year, but most of them were for 4-year levies. And the idea was there would be a periodic review by the voters. If they decided they thought they were getting their money's worth, they would vote to continue it. If they didn't, they would change. I will say that the SMART millage, as they called it, even though it was really the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority, in the opt-in communities enjoyed widespread support. It usually passed with 65 or 70% of the vote. And the communities outside that chose not to join never saw the reason to do it. So what you have before you today is really a big difference, because the understanding that the bodies that would put a tax question on the ballot were the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority and the Board of Commissioners. Apparently, the Board of Commissioners decided as a policy matter was that they would not have the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority put a question on the ballot because they had to approve it. And now there is a 10-year levy that's been suggested. And it's also what's called an all-in. It's a county-wide tax. The difference between what there is through that method and what existed before is every taxing jurisdiction in the county, if it passes on a county-wide vote basis, will pay the 0.95. The current millage that was authorized at 1 mil, and I think the Headley knocked it down to about 0.97. So it's a pretty dramatic difference. The population between the opt-in and opt-out communities has always been fairly close and balanced. And so now the question becomes, should the local units of government and what were formerly the opt-out areas, what position should they may want to take on this? Now, we as voters, I live in Clarkston now. I used to live in Warren Township. Even while I was on the board, I always lived in an opt-out community. When I look at this today, I understand that there's the main selling point is that you have local transportation, but especially for seniors and students. And there's a crisis because if tax doesn't pass, then you're not going to be able to provide those services. But I personally think it's important to understand the crisis is very intentionally created as a political strategy. Because the reason why there's a question is because the opt-in history of 27 years with 65 or 70% support was intentionally removed from the table. With the guys to put a slightly lower tax before all those communities and then impose upon the 37, I think it is, opt-out communities a tax question which will have them pay. And the questions I think the board's going to ask here, or this board, is should this tax pass, what legal obligation is there for the County of Oakland, who the Board of Commissioners will be responsible for oversight of how the money is spent? How are they going to divvy up the countywide services? Where is the money going to be spent? What's going to mandate that they spent money in the community where it was raised? And how will the local units of government be able to affect them? And with that, I'll save for questions because there's a lot there.
All right, next we're going to go to Bob Hoffman.
Thank you.
Close to the mic.
Thank you, Senator Runstead. My name is Bob Hoffman. I'm an Oakland County Commissioner. I represent now District 2, which is Highland Rose, Springfield, Holly, and Groveland, and the village of Holly. I'm a farmer, small business owner. This proposal first came to the Board of Commissioners, and I heard about it only 6 days before they called a special board meeting. And they were to discuss this tax, and they called the meeting on a Tuesday, August 10th at 4:30 in the afternoon. And I questioned, we never have board meetings at 4:30 in the afternoon. My only thought was that this is how we keep the public in the dark, and less of them will know what we're talking about. And I pointed out to them too, they're selling this tax as, they want you to believe the average price of a home in Oakland County is $200,000. So if the taxable value is $100,000, you'll pay $95. Well, I pointed out to them the average price of a home in Oakland County is $349,000. So the average working guy will pay $166 a year. But I also pointed out this is not just a tax on your residence, it's a tax on rental properties, commercial, industry, farmland. There's about 30,000 acres of farmland in Oakland County. Just imagine the amount of tax they'll pay for little or no benefit. Then they said that this is a 10-year tax, and I pointed out to them a 10-year tax in Oakland County is the closest thing we'll get to eternity on earth, because you'll be back in 8 years, you want to renew it and probably increase it. I also pointed out that this will bring in, as Jerry Poisson said, $66 million, and I say the first year, because we all know how proposal A works. Your taxes will automatically go up every year based on the rate of inflation of 5%, whatever is lower. Well, we know what inflation is. This tax will do nothing but hurt the working poor and the middle class, and that's one reason I really object to it. But further than that, they came to us without a plan, not even a study. It's like, you vote for it, we'll come up with a plan. And that's not good governance. Actually, I call it bad government on steroids. So what I did is And as Jerry also pointed out, this takes away local control. And that's why SMART was so successful, because they allowed that local control, the input. And I've told Oakland County many times, I don't need Oakland County to micromanage my district. We know what our needs are, we meet those needs, and we serve our citizens. And the needs of the south end of the county are far different than those of the north end. So we really need to have a bipartisan approach, but this is not it. Now, I introduced a opt-out resolution, which absolutely went nowhere. I was told by the chairman, I said, well, listen, we do that under SMART. And he said, well, you have to have an authority set up. I said, well, let's set up an authority. He said, there's not enough time. As Jerry pointed out, they created this emergency by allowing SMART to expire at the end of the year with no backup plan. So then I suggested to them, why don't we, in case this fails, we'll another resolution to use ARPA funds to keep the SMART system going. Because I do believe as a society, we have an honor and a responsibility to give those people a leg up, help the ones, the veterans, the seniors, those with special needs and disabilities. And nobody's trying to deny that at all. That resolution to use ARPA funds was referred to the LAGO Committee, Legislative Affairs and Government Operations. Well, the chairman flat out told me, I referred it there, but it'll never be on the agenda. So then I had another resolution, and I suggested, look, also in case it fails, why don't we plan ahead and plan to put this SMART village on the ballot the next election in May and still use the ARPA funds? Well, that went nowhere either. But I appreciate all you coming out here tonight, and the truth will set us free. You know, the truth always, I always say the truth always stands up to a lot of scrutiny. Thank you very much.
Okay, real briefly, if anyone has any questions, raise your hand and we'll get you some cards to write down your questions so the panelists can answer those. Bob, I don't think that's the correct name of that committee. I think it's called the Log Jam Committee.
Maybe it's the Go Nowhere Committee.
Next is Holly Supervisor George Cullis.
I'm talking about now.
George, you're on.
Yes.
Microphone closer.
Well, I want to point out too,
George.
as I mentioned, I represent District 2 now. With the redistricting, I will, assuming I'm successful in November, I will also represent Brandon, now I'm part of White Lake, so I don't want to slight anybody out there. Thanks, George.
So, yeah, so one of the concerns, as it's already been mentioned, was the 11th hour in the way that this came in. Now, they've got their material out there. They've posted some packets with some pictures of some maps. And they talk about where this mass transit is going to go. And as you see on this map over here, none of the northern or western part of the county will see any service. Dave Woodward's been in 2 public meetings that I've been present to, and in both meetings he has said, obviously, those densely populated areas won't be getting service. Well, and that's the question. We already have service in those areas. We operate smart buses. I'm the supervisor for Holly Township. We operate smart buses out of the village of Holly, and Holly Township and Rose Township and part of Groveland Township put money into the usage of those buses. Now, most of the people that live in Holly don't go south in the county. We have a hospital in Genesee County right outside the border, less than a mile away, and our residents go up there for their medical needs. We won't be able to go that direction. But those systems already exist. And the concern that I had was they have made the statement that we've talked to local communities and their leaders. They've talked to none of us. Bob DePalma is the township supervisor for Groveland. He's placed several calls and never even gotten a return call from him. He's in the audience tonight looking at me. I got that right. Yeah. And that's the problem. We've not been a part of this at all. And those are some of the concerns. You know, the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's where we're at up here. And losing that control. I operate Holly Township on 1 mill. This is going to take $384,000 out of our community. Those smart buses that we run, that we share with Rose Township and Groveland Township, that budget this year is $47,000. and next year it'll be $51,000. But from my township alone, they'll take $384,000. From Bob's community, about $252,000, and from Diane, the supervisor from Rose Township, is it just over $300,000? $310,000. Those three communities is almost $1 million a year for a system we already run on 50,000. Auburn Hills was an opt-in community, and after being in the program, they saw what the service was, and they felt they could do a better job of their own, and they wanted to opt out. And Smart told them they could in the beginning, and then they got a letter that said, no, you can't. So they went to court with that matter. That's how important it was to opt out. On a local basis, we know what our communities need, we know what the services we can provide, and we can do it for much less money. Government's job is to identify a problem, and they've yet to do this. They haven't shown us the statistics, they haven't shown us the facts. Why do we need this? And once you do identify a problem, then you sit down and you work with those community leaders and say, how do we form a solution? And that solution would obviously come with a cost, and that's the cost you pass on to your voters. Not, here's what we want, give us the money, we'll sit down and figure out how to spend it later. That's not the way government's supposed to work.
I thought it's, didn't Hillary say you pass it to find out what's in it?
Yes, that was a statement. Dave Woodward came to the Oakland County Association of Township Supervisors, and he was asked that question directly from a couple of different supervisors, and his answer was, right now we need to pass it, we'll figure out how to spend it later.
Okay, next we have from Addison Township, Rob Kuziak.
Hi, I'm Rob Gazanik, and I am not an elected official. I'm a resident of Addison Township who attended the county-wide call-in last week that was run by our county executive. Myself and three of my friends had questions that would, affect Addison Township regarding this vote. And we waited online for an hour, never heard a thing where we could get our questions asked. They had about 15 people ask questions, softball questions like, hey, can I take this to my doctor's office? Can I go to the airport? And of course, nothing challenging. We were quickly, at the end of the call, we were hung up, and I wrote a nice letter to to our county executive. Basically, in that meeting, they referenced you're going to have the ability to do, call in a call center. You're going to have the ability to have expanded routes outside your county area. You're going to have the ability to, book online. And I got to think, this is all the things that our NODA services offers right now in Addison Township. So apparently our Addison Township, Oakland County, our Northern Oakland County services are ahead of the pack when it comes to services we offer our community. And we're quick to adapt when we have issues where people, the seniors, or my daughter who's here tonight with special needs, she takes NODA 5 days a week to her work. There and back, door-to-door services. But when we have seniors that were having medical appointments in Rochester or in Romeo, we were able to adjust our routes in order to get outside our normal coverage area quickly to address the needs of the people in our community. It's a shame that these guys are trying to pursue a 0.95 mills against our township when our current mills are 0.2324. So it's a 308% increase in taxes for our community for no improved services. We have 2 paved roads in Addison Township, Rochester Road and Lakeville Road. We have 3 restaurants, 2 party stores. No one from Rochester, no one from Royal Oak is going to be getting on a bus coming out to Addison Township to go to these restaurants and go shopping in our area. We're a rural community. What we need the county to do is look at areas to help improve our cellular reception. Depending on what time of day, you either go to the front of the house or the back of the house if you want to make a call. In the last year, since January, we've lost power 9 times. Help with our infrastructure on power. And for God's sakes, why don't the Oakland County get a hold of Road Commission and help improve our roadways? Our dirt roads are pathetic. Plow drivers take no responsibility. They could take out a guardrail on a steep hill. Back in January, they don't come out and fix anything. No one takes responsibility for anything they're doing. Let's focus as a county on more important things than trying to give people a ride in our area and increase our taxes when there's no need for it. We're pretty self-sufficient as it is.
Okay, I'm going to mention again, if you have a question, raise your hand, we'll get the cards over to you. Next, we have State Senator Ruth Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. People need to know the facts, and that's, I don't think, been done before. And the fact that you're taking time from your busy schedule says a lot. Some of you might remember in 1978, we passed Prop 3. That was because we knew we needed to do a couple things. One is to bring down the taxes on our homes, our property taxes. We took the tax off grocery store food so people could get food. Food and shelter are two things we must have. We capped our property taxes too, and also didn't tax pharmaceuticals. This goes directly against what we're trying to do. We know people have to have a place to live, and whether you rent or you bought a house or you're buying a house, you will be paying that bill, as well as all the businesses, the 39,000 acres of agricultural land still in this county. People that make things, manufacturers, offices, your attorney's office, your dentist office, all of them will be paying this tax. I'm very concerned. I went to the county meeting and it was just steamrolled right on through. When you are going to double the amount of money you have coming in and tax people's homes, they do deserve a chance to be able to have input. And the input was very short indeed. And our local officials that we trust, that we know, that we see all the time, this plan will take away their part in making sure that it's good for our townships, our cities. They're completely stripped out. They never talked to any of my local officials. They just did it. And then I tried to work on today, what does that mean financially for our communities? Well, Jim got me this one, Senator Runstead. Right now, Commerce Township pays $186,000. By the way, they make a map so it looks like we have no services. When Dave Woodward, the Oakland County Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, goes around, he has this huge chunk, and it's like they don't get services. Yes, we do. We take care of ourselves, like Rob said. They pay $186,000. Oakland County will come in and charge them $2.3 million in property taxes, and they will get zero back. Randon Township currently pays $44,000. County will take $1.5 million, get zero back. I live in Groveland Township. My supervisor is here, Bob DePalma. We currently pay $6,000 to make sure our seniors and those with disabilities have a ride. And like George Cullis, we live on the border of Genesee County, and less than a mile over the border is all our medical needs. I talked to the bus driver, and he takes somebody 5 days a week for dialysis, wound care, cardiac care, tests, doctor's visits around Ascension, Genesis. Dave Woodward said we can't go outside, can't go over that little gray line, even though it's less than a mile, and that accounts for 90% of our seniors and those with disability rides. So my township pays $6,000. We only have 6,000 people. Oakland County will take $252,000. That's 42 times. And we get zero back. And we can't take people that we have been taking to get medical care. Holly, the village of Hollies has 48% Alice poverty. That's asset limited, income constrained, employed. The working poor. So we're going to have people that half of them are in poverty pay this tax, some one way or another, and also as it filters through the other businesses and properties, for them to get zero and have 90% of their transport taken away so they can't get medical services. And when Dave Woodward says we have to make sure we take care of our seniors, this is the problem. He didn't talk to our local elected officials to find out, or he doesn't care one way or another. Rose Township is the worst one I could find today. Rose Township pays $3,078. It's in the top 3 for low populations. The county will be taking $310,000. They get zero back, and they don't get a ride for medical services. How can this ever be fair? And Independence Township, where we're at right now, they currently also, even though it doesn't show on Dave Woodward's map, provide transit for seniors and those with disabilities. They currently pay $369,000. Oakland County will take $1.8 million annually for 10 years and give them zero back. I just don't see how this fits in with what Dave was saying. And I'm just going to go over a couple things that are bothering me because they just really aren't honest at all. And we've heard one side of it. First of all, they did do kind of a switcheroo on our resolution that Jerry Poisson made sure that we had so that our township officials and city's officials could opt out. Why would you put Line Hall in a township with 6,000 people? That's less than 3 times the density of Grayling, Michigan. Of course, it doesn't make sense. So that allowed us to opt out. And for those that opted in, then the people voted. He didn't discuss it with any of my local officials to figure out what we might need and how we can do it. He's the one that created the crises by not bringing up this resolution that comes up every 4 years for 27 years. He waited till last minute and used a different law so you can't opt out. So he's used this map over and over that shows these huge chunks of Oakland County not having transit. We do. We absolutely do, and we pay for it. He says in something he passed out the other day that we need to be able to cross over lines from different communities. We can. Matter of fact, we can go up until Genesee County where all our medical is. So that's just really not very accurate. And he says we need to do better with health care. How is stopping people in Northwest Oakland County getting to the hospital or getting services helping health care? So, he says that we have to advocate for seniors. I would say that's not advocating for them. Then they say that there's all these students that take a bus, and then somebody did a research on that, and that's not accurate. Now they've changed from one thing to another, and now they say we want to take people to sporting events. And I was on the radio with NPR. Yes, we should tax people's homes and businesses so we can go to sporting events so we don't get a DUI. I find it offensive. I was on NPR with Dave Woodward and their lobbyist, and she said that's what she wants to do. Well, that's not why you tax people's homes, not so they can go to sporting events so they don't get a DUI. And I would have to ask, when you get back to your car at where the bus picks you up, who's driving you home? People use Uber, they use Lyft, they have a designated driver. You don't get back in your car and drive. So Smart says in the newest one, if you've seen, ridership's up, come ride our bus to one of the entertainment. I think it's a football game. Does that look like ridership's up? So a lot of false information's out there. And we just wanted to be sure that you had all the information. So I'll thank you again for being here and turn it back to Senator Runstead, who I got to tell you, he fought so hard because they brought this to the Senate and they wanted up to 5 mills and a bigger region. So add that up. Now we know what they want. And one other thing, Smart has not been well run financially either. They owe over $100 million. Who's going to pay that? For pensions and health care that they offered, while spending lots of money on I'm not sure what. Senator Runstead.
Well, I do have some concerns that the county commissioners that hired that lobbyist are able to get down to those parties and back without getting a DUI, so they do need to have some kind of transportation in that regard. So to begin with the questions from the audience, what is the best way of, what is the benefit of increasing the taxes to Northwest Oakland? What are the proposed routes of the transit? Who would like to take that?
Well, that map that we had up earlier.
Get closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. The map that we had up earlier. There we go, that one. That shows the proposed routes that they talk about. The one going north to Oxford is part of NODA. Then there's one, well, actually, they don't even show the one going out to White Lake and Highland. That's currently done by WODA. and that would then fall under there. You know, they talk about this millage will replace 3 millages. One of those millages is for .1. That would increase that millage 9.5 times. Then they talk about a second millage, which is the one that Rob talked about for .23.
2324, and we just approved that in the last election for the next 4 years. We have got a board, we're managing the funds for our transportation system, so my question is, can they come in and take over what our board is currently doing?
At an increased cost of
At increase-
308%.
Yeah,
And then the next map, if you would, this shows the micro transit areas where they propose door to door. That's what they're already doing now. But you'll notice there's nothing across the northern part of that county. Interestingly enough, Senator Johnson made the comment that Independence Township, what they pay here for that bus system, that doesn't show up on these maps. I heard a gentleman back here, the head of their transportation, they provide 10,000 rides a year already for far less than what this millage is asking for.
And the seniors have no problem here in Buxton getting their rides.
No, they get door-to-door service.
Yeah.
All right, next, I think this one is a good one for Commissioner Bob Hoffman. How will people get services if this millage does not pass? Will smart service end in Oakland County?
Well, that's why I proposed a backup plan that, and I even asked the chairman, Woodward, do you have a backup plan? He said, no, because I'm sure this is going to pass. But I tried a backup plan, use ARPA funds, and then put it on the ballot in May, because I know that the smart millage would probably be overwhelmingly approved like it has in the past, because you have the opt-out option. And you can opt in if you want. But in my district, the supervisors and the village managers are doing an adequate job. And I think it was Bob DePalma's supervisor, Groveland, said to me one day that he's never received a call from somebody who can't get a ride, because we provide that service. We seek them out. You know, we meet their demands, and we provide a great service for a fraction of the cost.
NODA, their boundaries for NODA is Van Dyke Freeway to Telegraph Road, and M59 north to Lapeer County. I mean, that's a large chunk that's covered by NODA. I don't see why people in those areas would be having any issues whatsoever.
Well, that's a good point too, because this tax is just for Oakland County. And as somebody on this panel said, you can't go out of Oakland County. So as Ruth said, and George, in the northern end where people go to Genesee County for their medical help, you won't be able to do that anymore.
I think this next one would be good for Jerry Poisson. Why isn't Macomb County pursuing a tax too? What makes Oakland County so special?
There's a lot of things that make us special. But anyway, I certainly believe that Macomb does have a tax question up. They've, for 27 years, run a countywide millage. Last time after the recount, I think it passed by 38 votes. And I think there's some skepticism, and that was countywide, there's some skepticism whether that will pass. I guess you have to understand that there's a lot of talk. And having a legal background, I always want to say, you know, way before I became a lawyer, my father would tell me to get it in writing. And then when I worked for the county, it was what statute guarantees what you're saying or what binding contract does, because it's other people's money, you know, that we're dealing with. It's taxpayers' money. So now I'm just sitting here as a taxpayer and I want to know, you talk about a plan. I understand, just because I was so immersed in it, that SMART is an agency created by the state. And it operates using federal funds, and the number of laws and regulations governing federal transit monies are exhaustive. State has rules and regulation as well. And so the reality is there's a good chance Macomb, from what I understand, may not pass this millage. So that means whatever amount of money they were transferring to SMART to provide services in their county, that's gone. So obviously that's going to affect smart service. In Oakland County, if the tax doesn't pass, then that obviously will affect the service, because if we were, when I left, I think our local contribution was about 60% of the annual operating, and the other money came from the state and federal government. Obviously, you lose that much of your pay, it's going to affect service. But how that happens is going to be dependent first upon the fiscal reality of what's there, but then what the Board of SMART decides. And in reality, the Board of SMART are appointees of the Wayne County Executive, the Oakland County Executive, the Macomb County Executive. Right? Understand who's in control here. So in terms of controlling policy, if you're an appointee of an elected official, you're going to do what your elected official wants done. So for them to say SMART's going to do this right away, well, maybe SMART is, and maybe that's the threat, but SMART doesn't have to. I mean, Dave Coulter's appointees have to vote, one of them has to vote in the affirmative to any business decisions made, and that's the law. You need an affirmative vote from at least one representative representing Wayne County, Oakland County, Macomb County to transact in the business. So if the decision is, well, Oakland didn't pass this, we're going to take the buses so far that NODA and WODA and all the other ones have been using, because those are passed through using federal dollars through SMART out to the local communities, is how that works. They certainly have the legal authority to rearrange service, but they don't have the legal authority, I would say, to still take WODA's money or NODA's money and spend it somewhere else, because it's a specific statute. So that's why the crisis they've created was to remove that umbrella of money. And so I don't know when the tax year is going to end for NODA or WODA or any of those other ones, but if they're running on the same cycle as SMART's, as the Oakland County Public Transportation Authority, SMART money, it ends at the end of this tax year, right? So then going forward, there's no money. So the question is, will it be an effect? Yeah. And it actually compounds, because the money the state gets the next year and SMART gets the next year is based upon what's called eligible expenses. It's a business where you're rewarded for having a lot of expenses. You get more federal money. But if you don't have an eligible expense, if you don't run the service. And so yes, it will certainly go down. So if the real question is, it started out as, where's Macomb County? Well, Macomb County's going to do their own thing. But if it fails in Macomb County, SMART's got a problem. If it fails here, they got a problem. What could they do legally under existing law? The Oakland County Public Transportation Authority could put a millage question on the ballot with the approval of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners in the opt-in communities and say, do we want to continue what we've done for the last 27 years? And then that would continue the current system, right? Macomb County could either form a public transportation authority of their own, or they could run a second question if they chose to for it. What you're really doing here is they're telling you, it's like a furniture commercial. We're going to reduce the current levy in the opt-in communities. We're going to impose a new 0.95 countywide, and then we're all going to expand services. It's like we're going to sell every unit, every car, new car is at a loss, and we'll make it up on dime. That's not how it works, right? That everybody knows, at this time of huge inflation, the SMART, any transportation service is hugely capital intensive. The bus money, that $100 million people talk about, it's because you buy buses using federal funds and lease them and things like that. So you have this big note because buses are expensive. All right? And so you're always carrying a lot of capital money, debt. And it comes from the federal government, mostly some from the state. Operating was what the operating expenses, the day-to-day, the drivers, the gas and stuff, comes through whatever villages you cut, that you raise. And so that's all going to be in peril, and costs are going to go up. Inflation goes up, the drivers need more because they're trying to pay their mortgage. Gasoline costs go up. Lubricants, everything, it goes up. Rubber, tire. It's like, it's not immune from the same thing we feel in our households. And so there's a greater demand for money. There's going to be less ridership. That, by the way, is a national chart. You might say smart, but if you looked and saw nationally what's happened over the last decade and a half on public transit rides in this country, it's gone down. Lots of reasons, but that's the reality of it. So it costs more per mile. So if they don't get the money, they're gonna have to do something. And what I'm here to tell you is legally, we have mechanisms. I think the next legal election date would be February. Yeah, I know they can do 4 times a year. Now, I've already gotten through here, so there's a law that tells you when you can hold an election. I think it's 4 times a year legally. They could put a question on the ballot. And in the interim, they could take some of the tens of millions of dollars that they've received for COVID infrastructure improvements. And this is infrastructure. Transportation for the students they care about, and the seniors, and the disabled. They can legally use the money they have on transit to get them over the hump time. And hump time's created because they chose to run the gamble of doing a 10-year tax. That's it. I mean, it's a strategy that they've chosen.
I think your father was very wise to demand things written in a written contract rather than the written in the wind of the chair's verbal promises, which is what this is doing. So next we have, I think Senator Ruth Johnson would probably be best to answer this. How are people going to get to their jobs? People want jobs and employers need to hire. They can't get there. What do you propose instead?
I was at the Novi meeting because Jim had 2 meetings that night. He asked me to fill in for him. And it was interesting that less than 4% of the rides are for jobs. And we have someone here that owns their own business. And what he does is roll it into a package for them. They're good workers. Some people can't drive. Some people can't afford a car. Some people have had too many DUIs. Some people have seizures. But Ron Dwyer here owns his own business from Farmington.
I'll stand up and just say something real quick. Yes, since Ruth started talking about this. My name's Ron Dwyer, and actually it's very important that we vote this, get new people into the county commission. I myself, I'm running in District 3, which is Troy, Madison Heights, and Hazel Park. So please tell everybody there, we need to flip this commission back to the Republicans so we can stop what they're planning to do with this infrastructure money. But anyways, let me go to the point. Yes, I own a business. My worker was always missing the bus, or the bus was missing him. So what I did is I included it into his salary package. All right, I didn't want to lose the guy, and I didn't want to lose my clients by having my workers getting late. And this guy, he only lived about 10 miles away from work, and it took him an hour and a half to go from his house to a place of employment. So I included it in his salary package. My client is happy, my employee's happy, and that's the way to go. Microtransit is the way to go. I hire Uber and Lyft for the guy, and it works perfectly. So thank you, Ruth, for bringing me up.
Now, anyway, the question is, what some people feel is that you should be able to live any place in the county and you should get a ride. Think about the cost of that, whether the bus, the microbus, we've done point to point, we've called it for 20 years now. They act at the county like they call it microtransportation, and they're the ones that are new and are solving problems. But if you pay somebody, if you pay whatever the fuel costs are, whether it be gas, diesel, or propane, you're paying somebody and they're driving one of those buses, the cost is something that we could never pay for, ever. And especially on our homes, to tax our homes, it's wrong. And now, because they want to use it so people can drink too much to go to places to try to get their ridership up, and their ridership numbers are based on doing that already. The amount of people that take the bus to work has been estimated by them at 4%. So I think we need to look at some creative ways, because we do need to make sure that we have transportation, especially for seniors and those with disabilities, which we are doing a great job at for my township for 42 times less than what they want in the village.
Thank you. And next, this one pertains to realtors specifically. I know we have some realtors here in the audience. Realtors represent private property rights for home ownership. Should the proposed tax succeed, how will the Regional Tax Authority affect the prosperity taxes in residential and commercial properties. I don't know who'd like to take a whack at that.
It increases by 0.95.
Yeah, I think a lot of realtors just simply are not aware of the impact that this is going to have. I mean, there's all of these taxes, and I'm hearing horrible things about on the federal level, what is coming, a tax tsunami. And so I think these realtors have got to be aware of what's going on, and hopefully that word is getting out there. Next, there's a law in Michigan that prevents Oakland County from allowing communities to opt out from the proposals such as the is there a law in Michigan that prevents Oakland County from allowing communities to opt out of the proposals such as transit? Go ahead, Jerry.
Understand this is just simply a countywide operating millage. Okay? Under Headley, they have to have a vote to increase taxes. We already have whatever the approved tax rate is right now. So it's just a countywide levy that they've indicated they will dedicate to buying transit services from transit providers. So there's no opt-out from a countywide levy for county operating purposes. It's just a county tax, countywide tax.
Thank you. Next, my mother-in-law lives in Oxford and rides NODA buses to Myers. She was told that if this passes, her driver would bring her to my house in Holly. Is this really going to happen? I would like a time frame. Let's take Commissioner Hoffman, and then we'll go to George after.
You know, I really can't answer that because guess what? They don't have a plan yet.
George, you want to
As Dave Woodward has said, those densely populated areas won't receive services. And there is nothing in the plan on either of those maps that you saw that call for microtransit or any form of routes that come to Holly or the village of Holly.
Okay, and our next one is we'll go to Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson, if you don't support the transit proposal, how would you suggest improvement that can be made to expand transportation for Independence Township? What we have is not good enough.
Well, what Independence Township will be paying and getting nothing for is many times over with this plan. They lose local control. You know your local officials. You can talk to them. You can go to the meetings. This will be moved all under the Board of Commissioners. So it will be about 4 to 40 or 100 times more doing it this way, which I don't think meets the people's needs. And I do want to make sure that I did make a mistake. 0.4% use it for going to work, less than 0.5% of the ridership right now. So we want to keep what we have. What we have works great. This is a solution to a problem that just absolutely doesn't exist. The problem that exists is that people, many people don't have extra money to spend for something that they're not going to get, and it should never be put on their homes. When I was Oakland County Clerk Register of Deeds, we had the second largest loss of homes in the history of Michigan. Only the Great Depression more. We had files, and kids crying because they had to move away. We should not be burdening property taxes. You must have shelter. So you have to see who is going to be able to benefit from it. And that's what we have now. We have local control. And you saw all those places, I have pages of them, that are providing local transit. They can go to their local officials and ask for what they need. But to pay 40 times more than you are now, there's only so much money. That means there's far less rides. I'm very concerned about the cost, and I'm very concerned about losing local control. That's not a good solution for me.
Thank you. This next one, I think will be a little complicated, not knowing what community this individual is from, but they said, what will this cost me above what I am currently paying?
I can tell you the formula.
Yeah, the formula.
The formula is Take the taxable value of your home, which is on your tax payment, multiply it by 0.00095. And that will give you a sum, and that's what the tax will be. Now, if you're already in an opt-out community, it in theory should be a little bit less than the 0.97 you're paying right now. And of course, it's all new money if you're in an opt-out community.
Let's be real how much it's really gonna cost. Doctor bills are gonna increase, gas, all of your expenses are gonna increase because of the services you use around the community.
Okay, this next one, why weren't pro-transit people invited? I posted on every Facebook, you can imagine, all over the county. Went to each one, and someone would say, "You're not in our community, why are you posting on here?" So I was posting everywhere I could. Plus, it went out to media, it went all over the place. So everybody was invited, and didn't censor any cards. These are every card we've got, and I'm reading through them.
And I just want to say we sent out 1,000 invites from our office for people to come and listen. So I'm not sure that's a question that's accurate.
Well, I guess I could say that the person who wrote that question is probably for the millage, so he heard about it. Or she.
This next one is from Supervisor Bob DePalma. With the lack of detail, how do my citizens ever get a value for this tax? It's 42 times what I am currently paying. I don't want to take an answer to that.
Well, if I can, to put that into perspective, because Groveland Township, with their population of under 6,000, Rose Township's population is just over 6,000, and Holly Township is a population of 12,000. Between those three communities, we currently run the system for $47,000. Next year it'll be $51,000. The three townships will collectively be paying $942,000 for transit that we will be getting no services. We could buy limousines with drivers with a little hat and provide that service for the amount of people we have, the amount of drivers, or the amount of rides that we need.
What are you paying?
Right now, you pay nothing.
No, I'll try.
Oh, you want to get higher? Yeah. Right now, our citizens don't pay anything because between our federal funding, our CDBG funds, and our own general funds, it's all funded. So there is no cost for the services that are provided.
And I think that's one of the concerns about the maps been handed out by the county, is it shows our 6 townships, including this one, as not having services. We do have services. We just do it for pennies on a dollar, and we don't have a dedicated millage. The zip code that Supervisor Bob DePalma and we have the supervisor from Rose Township, it's 48442. That's the northwest Oakland County. And we're 38% Alice poverty. We're working poor. People that get out and work every day just to barely make it. They can't buy good food. They can't buy their prescriptions, and they're working to do it. It's just not fair to tax them for something that not only are they going to get nothing, but they're not allowed to go where 90% of our rides go, which is for medical services, just barely over the county line. That's where they're going now, 90%. Plus, they also go to Walmarts where they can buy food and clothes and anything else that they might need. I brought my phone book because I live in Groveland Township, and this is for Holly Groveland Township. We're in the Genesee County telephone book because that's where our commerce is and our medical is. So it's punitive. It's truly punitive, and it's punitive. It's just to punish and I believe manipulate to say that they're going to shut down the buses for seniors if this doesn't pass, because that's really not accurate.
Right now for NODA and Addison Township and the other NODA communities, because of government monies that are available, there's no cost to riders. So it's free for everyone right now.
Okay, next we have, if the buses cannot leave the county and all major sporting events are in Detroit, but sporting events are open county residents supposed to attend, that's smart.
We're not the ones that said that.
They said on their lobbyist said that it would be nice for people to be able to go to a Tigers game and not get a DUI on the way home. And when I repeat that, I usually, unfortunately, Dave Woodward snickers at it to be condescending, but it's on the radio. And also, it's on my phone, I'll try to find it, but there's another ad up that says, ridership is up, come ride to a football game, that they sent out recently. So, as you can see, ridership is not up, and I don't think we should be paying extra property taxes for those kinds of things. And when they count their ridership, they also, at least in the past, if you rode to someplace and back, you're 2 riders. So when you look at the real statistics, the people that ride it isn't near as high as what it says. And I think my supervisor, Bob DePalma, said the same thing at our meeting. He said, you're in search of a problem that doesn't exist, finding answers that are not good answers. And he could have 3 limousines sitting in the township parking lot to give people rides for a fourth of what they want from the township, from our township off our property taxes, to be added on to our property taxes.
Next is, did all the commissioners vote to put this on the ballot? Oh, yes, rather. Did all of the commissioners vote yes to put this on the ballot?
No. All the Democrat commissioners voted for it and 2 Republicans. I voted against it.
Next, you are all saying they have called this meeting. They didn't have a plan. They have talked to the community leaders, etc. Who are they? It's probably to Commissioner Hoffman.
They is the administration of Oakland County, the county exec, Dave Coulter, Dave Woodward, the chairman of the board. The Democrats are the majority, and of course all the Democrats followed and sued. And like they say, I first heard about this 6 days before they called that special board meeting, so it was just a rumor at first, but that's who they is.
Thank you. Next, bus systems in southeastern Michigan have never run efficiently or on time. I understand that the current bus system is woefully short of bus drivers. How are they going to expand the system? Who would like to take a whack at that?
They don't have a plan.
We can't answer that.
Yeah, you'll have to have a plan, and that's what we had before, the opt-ins that wanted the large buses, the line haul buses, because the locals could vote first before the people did. They had the power. Plus, it was every 4 years, so you can hold them accountable, not a 10-year, where you really have a hard time, and then moving it to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, where there's 21 people in Pontiac. So you have to have accountability, you have to have transparency, and you have to have some power to be able to change it. And there's nothing better than citizens to do that.
I've written Dave Coulter, asked him to come out to Edison Township and explain to us what everything is. Crickets, not one response.
You know, Jim, if I may, one of the questions that has been asked of Dave Woodward, I asked it myself in the OCATS meeting, was where can you show me a bus route that I can go and observe where the buses are full? Do we have any bus stops where there are people left at the bus stop because there was no room on the bus? If you go down and we read about it in the news, the people mover in downtown Detroit loses money every year. What do they call the new line that they put in?
Q line.
The Q line. Those buses sit there, with the exception of maybe on the weekend, a few riders, they sit there and they're empty all the time. We have not made the case for additional mass transit. We've got buses that are sitting there empty. It's the systems that we use in the northern part of the county, the door-to-door, that's what's working. And we can do it for far less than this money that they're asking for.
Thank you. Next.
I've already got a driver.
You're being passed.
Next, a lot of young people in my area can't get jobs because they can't afford cars, and my community doesn't have transit. What do they do? That's from Commerce. you read that again? A lot of young people in my area cannot get jobs because they cannot afford cars, and my community does not have transit. What do they do?
Well, young people can do a lot of things for a job. They don't have to go and, get a job at McDonald's or the local tool and die company. There's things they can do for their neighbors. There's things they can do for their churches. There's other organizations they can work for to earn money. And you don't go out and get yourself a brand new Corvette. You go out and get yourself a beater with a heater. It's like everyone else should start. And you work your way up that food chain.
I am concerned about one thing. It's my understanding that Commerce Township does have a bus system.
I think it does.
Larry Gray's not here this evening, but
Yeah, they do have a bus system for seniors and those with disabilities. They pay $186,000. If this millage passes, Oakland County will take $2.3 million in property taxes, and Commerce Township would get zero back. And I don't see anything on that map that brings any service to any more people in Commerce Township.
Thanks,
This next one I think would go well for Commissioner Hoffman. It's not precisely on the transit tax, but it's on the road commission. Can you comment on the attempt by the commission to take over the road, of the county commission to take over the road commission?
What's the question?
Specifically,
It's not specifically on the transit, but the question is, can you comment on the Oakland County Commission's attempt to take over the road commission?
Oh, okay. Where that is right now, and I don't know how long ago this happened, a few months ago, it was voted to create a study group to study if the county government should take over the Oakland County Road Commission. Initially, I'm not in favor of it. I'll listen to anybody if they want to have a conversation about it. But we all know throughout history that people in power, you can lose your job or you lose your election if the roads don't get plowed or the snow doesn't get moved. And, so I think Brooks was probably pretty smart to keep it separate. And you know this story better than me, but people would come to Brooks lots of times and they'd complain about the roads. And he said, no, call 248-645-2000. That's the road commission. We have nothing to do with the roads. Then every now and then somebody would come to Brooks and say, geez, Brooks, I want to compliment you. They graded my road, they paved it, they did a great job. Brooks said, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Then the next, the county said, we all will eventually have service. When can I expect to catch a bus when I live 2 miles down a gravel road? Next year, 5 years, ever?
Never. Unless you got no done, you can go door to door.
Sounds good. Next one is, the next to last, micro transit. How will it work? Who can use it if it passes?
They have no plan. Their only plan that they're telling us is how much that they're going to charge us, and that's about $166 for an average house in Oakland County. We also know that the vast majority of the geographic area will get nothing, no more services at all. And we also know that Northwest Oakland County will lose their ability for 90% of their rides for seniors and those with disabilities to get medical tests, attention, and therapy. So this is the thing that all across the county, they're saying, where's the plan? How much is my township going to get? What about my city? They can't answer that. How do you ever put together getting double in tax money on property without first engaging the local officials and the people to find out, number one, what are the issues, what are the challenges, and two, coming up with a plan? I've never seen this in 32 years. I've never seen anything like this. It seems to me that it's about money and power and not being transparent. I've never seen such a lack of transparency on something.
Well, that's a good point again about not having a plan. And because you don't have a plan, the proposal of 0.95 mils is just an arbitrary number. They could have picked 1.5 mils, they could have picked 0.5 mils, it doesn't matter, they don't have a plan. Now politically, they picked 0.95 mils, because smart communities pay approximately 1 mil. So they're telling these people, you vote for this, you're getting a tax cut. But they're all arbitrary numbers, a lot of it's politically driven, and it's, as I said before, it's bad government on steroids.
You know, Jim, we talk a lot about what the homeowners are gonna pay, and that's an important thing because we're all homeowners, even those people that rent apartments or live in mobile home parks, that cost is gonna be added. And these businesses pass that cost on to the consumer, whether it would be the renter or the person that lives in a mobile home park. The other thing we haven't talked about is this cost is gonna go onto your agricultural land, but it's also gonna go onto commercial businesses. And we seem to enjoy taxing commercial businesses because we think they've got all the money, when the reality is that cost is part of running the business and it's passed down to the consumer. That's the problem we're having with inflation right now. All of these things are being passed on to the consumer and the prices just continue to go up. And who does that hurt? It hurts those low-income people every time.
You're absolutely correct. This one's from Kirk Harrison. I know lives here in Independence Township. If this millage passes, what happens to the existing bus systems in these northern communities?
Well, first of all, we pay for it ourselves, and our leaders, like George Cullis and Bob DePalma, and all 6 townships in the northwest part of Oakland County, they take the money out of money that they have. They take it out of the general fund. They run our budgets on a shoestring for us. And again, a large part of us are living day to day, trying to get through, trying to make our payments. So when you look at what we have now, it works. It absolutely works. And it works for 42 times less, or in Rose Township's case, over 100 times less than what SMART wants to charge us. When I say SMART, SMART will be dissolved and there'll be this new region. And because Senator Runstead and I serve in the Senate, we only made it by 2 votes holding off up to 5 mils for the region on our homes, businesses, agriculture, manufacturing, offices. And that's the trickle-down hidden taxes that we'll pay on top of what the other ones are. So we know what the goal is here, and it's so important that you know too.
Well, the question I have is, if this gets passed, what happens to our board of directors for our North Oakland Transportation Authority? Do they get replaced? Do the people that they bring in know what's going on in our community, serve us better? We don't know. That's all up in the air.
Actually, I can't answer that. In the meeting, when Dave Woodward came to the Oakland County Association of Township Supervisors, his response to that question was, those systems like WODA and NODA that are in operation, they will give them a couple $1 million and they will partner with them and let those transportation systems continue.
So we pay for the same management team we have. We pay more in taxes for the same group that we have and fewer services.
Well,
Double.
he actually promised there would be additional funding so you could expand. The problem was the additional funding was nowhere near what you're going to pay.
Yeah.
That's the point.
It's bad math any way you look at it, really bad math.
Well, we don't need to expand when we're already meeting the needs of the community. I mean, we only have a set amount of people in our community. You know, we're not going to go out and say, hey, do you need a ride somewhere? You know, we're good. We got it self-covered.
I think we pretty much answered this next question. If this passes, services like WODA and NODA, will they have to stop servicing their communities?
I just answered that.
Yeah. The next one, since there is no plan, this is what Senator Ruth Johnson did just address, is since there's no plan, is it likely the mills will go up, as in higher than 0.9 in the future? And I would say that I think there's a much bigger plan here at work. I think that their goal is to bring a regional transit authority tax that can then become a regional taxing system for many, many other wonderful programs that they want to do on a regional basis. The last one I have is, how can we continue to pay for a system that is not financially feasible?
So you're talking about the government?
They're the government, they're here to help. Yeah, unfortunately, Senator Runstead and I see that at the state level too. I can't think of one governmental group except for our cities, townships, and villages that are staying within their budgets. And that's why local control for me is so accountable, transparent, and they have to balance the budget. At the state, I think we've gone from 45 billion to 75 billion in a very short time, and Jim and I just voted against the last $1 billion that they added on. You know, the piper's coming, whether it's federal government, state government. In my opinion, it will be taxes, they'll call them user fees, or they'll be hidden amounts that we pay because somebody else's tax. I think we're going to be in for some challenges, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important that people know about taking away the local control, the transparency and accountability. And if I lived in the south end of the county and I was an opt-in, I would vote no, because I'm losing that local input. I'm losing that transparency and accountability, and I think that's so important. And hang on to your wallets, because government's just spending more money than we have, for sure. And that also leads to some of the inflation that we see.
Well, we're getting close to our finish time. I want to definitely thank Senator Ruth Johnson's staff members who did a fabulous job. My staff did some of it, but there's the yeoman's job of putting all this together. And also want to thank Senator Johnson and the rest of our panel, starting with Jerry. You want just a quick summation, or we'll go down the line?
A quick summation. Understand that when you make your decision on how you vote, that you're really voting to send the money from your local community to the south end. Doesn't get any easier than that. They can't reduce the millage rate in the existing part of the system, and at the same time tell them they're going to improve their system by adding more services without more money. The money's coming from the north. And believe me when I tell you, I've been trying to do this for 20 years. This is just another act in that play. And I believe the senator is right. There's already a law that's on the books because we worked on it, the Regional Transportation Authorities Act. If they could get the votes to run a millage in the already established legal region for transportation, they would. But they've never been able to get, during my time in office, which ended 3 years ago, votes from Oakland County or Macomb County to put up a regional tax. That law's still out there. That's still the plan. And so, yes, at the end of the day, they want a regional system where they funnel money primarily to Wayne County. And this is a very complex area in terms of what's out there. I will end up with one factoid that you need to know. Transit systems historically were developed to take people from bedroom communities, workers, down to the work centers, the cities where everybody wanted to go. It's how it works in most of the world. In Michigan, in Detroit, in southeastern Michigan, it can't work because the Brookings Institution, which is a fairly liberal think tank organization of some repute, has twice in the last 2 decades done a study, and they come up with the same report each time. Detroit is unique because more than 80% of the jobs, it's probably 90%, are more than 10 miles from the city center. And when you get out 10 miles, you'll realize you're in the inner ring suburbs and in the central suburbs of southeastern Michigan. And once you get there, there is no centralized job corps. The jobs are diffused around Macomb, Oakland, Wayne County, into Monroe and Washtenaw. And so a traditional transit system approach of line haul buses from the sleeping areas to the job downtown, like Chicago, like New York, it doesn't work here because the reality is those jobs aren't there. So as long as you try and keep that dynamic going, you're going to be throwing good money after.
We're going to Bob, and we're going to finish with Johnson.
I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. Don't believe it. This is in my opinion, a taxation without representation.
George?
You know, our job as voters and taxpayers is to hold our elected officials' feet to the fire. I want you to identify the problem. I want you to identify the plan. Once you've done that, I want to see the cost of the plan, and I have a right to know how you're going to spend my money. On a local basis, I'm a local elected official. Every one of my constituents knows exactly where my house is, and they don't hesitate to pull in my front yard and call me on it. They don't hesitate to call me and ask me to explain things. They catch me in the grocery store, they catch me walking down the street. I'm out there. It's different when you start to go up the chain and you get to the state legislature. We don't know where everybody lives. We can't go ask everybody. But as voters, our job is to hold your feet to the fire, and I want to see how you're spending the money. And that's not what's happening here.
We got more pressing problems. Fix our infrastructure and fix our communication problems before we start worrying about bus routes.
Thank you. And Senator Ruth Johnson, if you want to wrap us up.
Thank you. Well, Jim and I have served in the Senate. It's been a tough fight to keep off the up to 5 mills. In addition to that, they changed it from an RTA, or Regional Transit Authority, to a partnership. That means it could be for everything, so we would be funding everything in other areas. We live within our budgets. They should too. So within that municipal partnership, they also had an amendment that I have kept in my office. Garrett has it for me. It's a maximum of a $25,000 fine for misappropriation on funds of $60 billion and no opportunity to use the Freedom of Information Act. This is not what government should be about. We need to be transparent. We need to be open. We need to get your input, and that's why I think losing local control, no matter where I lived in this county, and it's not even 1 mil different because of Headley, you're talking about $2 on $100,000 that somebody might save in the opt-ins, but what they are going to lose will be worth gold. But thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being interested. Thanks for asking great questions. There's nothing more important than citizen activism, and I would just close with this. We're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat.
Right on.
Thank you for coming.